World War II, the most devastating conflict in human history. Behind the battles and strategies stood three men, each representing a different ideology, vision, and legacy. Today, we delve deep into the lives of Adolf Hitler, Winston Churchill, and Franklin D. Roosevelt, the leaders who shaped the war and its outcome. Few names in history evoke as much fear and controversy as Adolf Hitler. From an impoverished youth in Austria to the infamous dictator of Nazi Germany, Hitler's life is a story of ambition, hatred, and the devastating consequences of unchecked power. Let's dive into the detailed journey of Adolf Hitler, exploring his rise to power, his actions during World War II, and the legacy he left behind. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20th, 1889, in Braunau am Inn, Austria, a small town near the German border. His father, Alois Hitler, was a domineering customs official, and his mother, Clara Polzel, was a deeply devoted and caring figure. Young Adolf had a turbulent childhood characterized by frequent clashes with his father, who disapproved of his artistic aspirations. Hitler performed poorly in school, frequently rebelling against authority figures. After the death of his father in 1903, he dropped out of high school and moved to Vienna in 1907, determined to pursue a career as an artist. However, his dreams were dashed when he was rejected twice by the Academy of Fine Arts Vienna. This period was marked by poverty and despair, as Hitler lived in homeless shelters and struggled to make ends meet. It was during these formative years in Vienna that Hitler absorbed the anti-Semitic and nationalist ideologies that would later define his political career. In 1913, Hitler moved to Munich, Germany, seeking a fresh start. When World War I broke out in 1914, he eagerly enlisted in the Bavarian army. Hitler served as a messenger on the Western Front, displaying bravery under fire but never advancing beyond the rank of corporal. He was awarded the Iron Cross, First Class, a rare distinction for someone of his rank, which became a source of immense personal pride. The end of the war in 1918 was a profound shock to Hitler. Germany's defeat and the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles left him embittered and resentful. The treaty's demands for reparations and territorial concessions fueled Hitler's belief that Germany had been betrayed from within, a sentiment he would later exploit politically. After the war, Hitler remained in Munich, working as a spy for the German army to monitor political groups. It was during this time that he encountered the German Workers' Party, DAP, a small nationalist group. Attracted to their ideology, he joined the party in 1919. Hitler's oratory skills and charismatic presence quickly elevated him to a leadership position, and the party was soon renamed the National Socialist German Workers' Party, Nazi Party. In 1923, Hitler attempted a coup known as the Beer Hall Putsch, aiming to overthrow the Weimar Republic. The coup failed, and Hitler was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison. During his 9 months in confinement, he dictated his autobiography and political manifesto, Mein Kampf, My Struggle, which outlined his vision for Germany's future, including ideas of Aryan supremacy and anti-Semitism. Upon his release, Hitler rebuilt the Nazi Party, capitalizing on widespread economic despair and political instability. By 1933, the Nazi Party had become the largest political force in Germany, and Hitler was appointed chancellor. Following the death of President Paul von Hindenburg in 1934, Hitler consolidated his power, declaring himself Führer and establishing a totalitarian regime. Hitler's aggressive expansionist policies began with the annexation of Austria in 1938 and the occupation of Czechoslovakia in 1939. His invasion of Poland on September 1st, 1939, triggered World War II as Britain and France declared war on Germany. Hitler's military strategies, particularly the use of blitzkrieg tactics, led to rapid victories across Europe, including the occupation of France by 1940. Under Hitler's leadership, the Nazi regime implemented the Holocaust, a systematic plan to exterminate Jews, Romani people, disabled individuals, and other groups deemed undesirable. The establishment of concentration camps like Auschwitz and Dachau became synonymous with unimaginable atrocities, leading to the deaths of 6 million Jews and millions of others. However, Hitler's overconfidence and relentless ambition proved to be his undoing. In 1941, he launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion invasion of the Soviet Union. This decision stretched German resources thin and led to catastrophic defeats, such as the Battle of Stalingrad. Simultaneously, the entry of the United States into the war after the attack on Pearl Harbor further tilted the balance against Germany. By 1944, the Allied invasion of Normandy, D-Day, marked the beginning of the end for the Nazi regime. Hitler's refusal to adapt to changing military realities and his insistence on issuing irrational orders accelerated Germany's decline. By early 1945, the Allies were advancing on all fronts, and Berlin was under siege. Hitler retreated to his bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery, where he lived in isolation with a shrinking circle of loyalists. As Soviet forces closed in on Berlin, Hitler's behavior became increasingly erratic, issuing delusional orders and blaming his generals for the failures of his regime. On April 29, 1945, Hitler married his longtime companion, Eva Braun, in a brief ceremony held in the bunker. The next day, April 30th, 1945, Hitler and Braun committed suicide. Hitler shot himself while Braun took cyanide. Their bodies were burned, as per Hitler's instructions, to prevent their capture by the Soviets. With his death, the Third Reich collapsed and Germany surrendered unconditionally on May 7, 1945. Adolf Hitler's legacy is one of unparalleled destruction and moral depravity. His rise to power serves as a cautionary tale of how propaganda, unchecked ambition, and hatred can lead to catastrophic consequences. The scars left by his regime, from the devastation of World War II to the horrors of the Holocaust, continue to shape the world's collective memory. Historians and educators emphasize the importance of remembering Hitler's atrocities to prevent history from repeating itself. As philosopher George Santayana famously remarked, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Hitler's story is not merely a chapter in history. It is a profound lesson on the dangers of intolerance, authoritarianism, and apathy in the face of injustice. Adolf Hitler's life is a grim reminder of the destructive potential of power wielded without morality or restraint. His actions reshaped the world, leaving behind a legacy of devastation and suffering. As we reflect on his story, we are reminded of our responsibility to uphold justice, equality, and human dignity to ensure that such darkness never rises again. He was the man who rallied a nation in its darkest hour, a leader whose words became weapons and whose resolve shaped the course of history. Winston Churchill, the indomitable Prime Minister of the United Kingdom during World War II, stands as a symbol of resilience and leadership. Let's journey through his remarkable life, exploring the trials, triumphs, and legacy of one of the most influential figures of the 20th century. Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill was born on November 30th, 1874, at Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire, England. The sprawling estate, gifted to his ancestor John Churchill, the first Duke of Marlborough, by Queen Anne, reflected the grandeur of his lineage. His father, Lord Randolph Churchill, was a prominent conservative politician known for his fiery speeches, and his mother, Jenny Jerome, was a glamorous American socialite. Despite these illustrious connections, young Winston's upbringing was far from idyllic. Churchill's parents were emotionally distant. His father was often preoccupied with political ambitions, while his mother's social engagements left little time for maternal affection. Winston found solace in his nanny, Elizabeth Everest, whom he called Woomany. At school, Churchill's rebellious nature and mediocre grades made him a challenging student. He particularly struggled with Latin and mathematics, but showed an early love for history and English. After enduring several schools, Churchill was admitted to Harrow School. Although he initially lagged behind, his interest in the English language and debate began to flourish. Determined to follow a military career, Churchill attended the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst, where he graduated 8th in his class in 1894, qualifying for the cavalry. This achievement marked a turning point, setting the stage for his adventurous early years. Churchill's military career began in earnest in 1894 1895, when he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the 4th Queen's Own Hussars. His early postings took him to Cuba, where he observed guerrilla warfare, and then to India, where he spent time reading extensively to educate himself on history, philosophy, and politics. His experiences in the military were not without risk. In 1898, he joined the Malakand Field Force in present-day Pakistan, where he first saw combat. In 1899, Churchill gained international attention as a war correspondent during the Second Boer War. His dramatic escape from a Boer prison after being captured during a reconnaissance mission made him a national hero. These exploits, combined with his sharp writing, helped him gain popularity and laid the foundation for his political career. Churchill's entry into politics came in 1900 when he was elected as the Conservative Member of Parliament for Oldham. However, his independent thinking and advocacy for progressive reforms soon alienated him from party leaders. By 1904, Churchill crossed the aisle to join the Liberal Party, championing social reforms such as labor rights, unemployment insurance, and public health initiatives. His work during this period included pivotal roles in the Board of Trade and the Home Office, where he earned a reputation as a bold and reform-minded politician. As First Lord of the Admiralty in 1911, Churchill played a critical role in modernizing the Royal Navy, anticipating its importance in the looming conflict. When World War I broke out in 1914, Churchill's leadership ensured the Navy was prepared. However, his career faced a significant setback during the Gallipoli Campaign of 1915, a disastrous attempt to seize control of the Dardanelles. The failed campaign resulted in heavy Allied losses and forced Churchill to resign from the Admiralty. Humbled but undeterred, Churchill volunteered for active service, commanding a battalion on the Western Front in 1916. His time in the trenches gave him a renewed perspective on war and leadership. By 1917, he returned to government as Minister of Munitions, overseeing the production of tanks, aircraft, and ammunition that contributed to the Allied victory. The interwar period was fraught with challenges for Churchill. After rejoining the Conservative Party in the 1920s, he served as Chancellor of the Exchequer, where his decision to return Britain to the gold standard proved economically damaging. His staunch opposition to Indian independence and controversial support for Edward VIII during the abdication crisis further alienated him from his peers. Churchill's warnings about Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany in the 1930s were largely ignored, earning him the reputation of a political outcast. These wilderness years were a time of deep frustration but also of preparation. Churchill spent this period writing extensively, producing works such as The History of the English-Speaking Peoples and refining his arguments against appeasement. In May 1940, as Nazi forces swept through Europe, Churchill was appointed Prime Minister. His leadership during Britain's darkest hour became legendary. Churchill's speeches, infused with determination and defiance, inspired a nation on the brink of collapse. "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender," he proclaimed, rallying the British people during the Blitz and beyond. Churchill's strategic vision extended beyond Britain. He cultivated a close relationship with Franklin D. Roosevelt, securing vital American support through the Lend-Lease Act. His partnership with Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, though fraught with tension, was crucial in coordinating the Allied war effort. Churchill played a pivotal role in planning key operations, including the D-Day invasion in 1944, which marked the turning point of the war in Europe. Despite his wartime heroics, Churchill's party was defeated in the 1945 general election, reflecting Britain's desire for social and economic reform. Churchill, however, remained a towering figure in international politics. In 1946, he delivered his famous Iron Curtain speech in Fulton, Missouri, warning of Soviet expansion and signaling the start of the Cold War. In 1951, Churchill returned as Prime Minister, focusing on rebuilding Britain's economy and maintaining its global influence. His second term was marked by challenges, including Britain's waning imperial power and his own declining health. Nevertheless, his efforts to strengthen the Western alliance against communism solidified his reputation as a statesman. Churchill retired from politics in 1955 but continued to write and paint. His 6-volume memoir, The Second World War, earned him the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1953. He passed away on January 24, 1965, at the age of 90. His state funeral was attended by world leaders and millions of mourners, a testament to his enduring legacy. Winston Churchill's legacy is one of resilience, eloquence, and leadership. His ability to inspire and unite people during Britain's darkest hours has cemented his place as one of history's greatest leaders. While his career was not without controversy, his unwavering commitment to democracy and freedom left an indelible mark on the world. Winston Churchill once said, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." His life, filled with triumphs and setbacks, stands as a testament to this philosophy. Churchill's story reminds us that true leadership lies not just in the victories won, but in the perseverance to rise again when faced with defeat. Few leaders have faced challenges as daunting as those confronted by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. From steering the United States through the Great Depression to guiding the Allied powers to victory in World War II, Roosevelt's leadership left an indelible mark on history. Let us explore his remarkable life, from his privileged beginnings to his transformative presidency and enduring legacy. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was born on January 30th, 1882, in Hyde Park, New York. As the only child of James Roosevelt and Sarah and Delano, Franklin grew up in a wealthy and influential family. His father was a successful businessman and landowner, while his mother devoted herself entirely to Franklin's upbringing. This sheltered and privileged childhood shaped his confidence and instilled a strong sense of responsibility. Roosevelt received his early education from private tutors before attending the prestigious Groton School, an Episcopal preparatory institution in Massachusetts. At Groton, young Franklin developed a sense of duty to serve society, a value instilled by the school's headmaster, Endicott Peabody. In 1900, Roosevelt entered Harvard University, where he studied history and government. Though not an outstanding student academically, he was an active participant in campus life, joining several clubs and becoming the editor of the Harvard Crimson. It was during this time that Franklin met his distant cousin, Theodore Roosevelt, whose dynamic leadership as president profoundly influenced Franklin's political ambitions. In 1905, Franklin married Eleanor Roosevelt, his fifth cousin once removed and a niece of Theodore Roosevelt. Eleanor's intellect and social commitment complemented Franklin's ambitions, and together, they became a powerful political partnership. Eleanor would later redefine the role of First Lady, advocating for human rights and social reform. Franklin began his political career in 1910 when he was elected as a Democratic state senator in New York, representing a traditionally Republican district. He quickly gained a reputation as a reformer, opposing entrenched party bosses and advocating for progressive legislation. In 1913, President Woodrow Wilson appointed Roosevelt as Assistant Secretary of the Navy, a position previously held by his cousin Theodore. Roosevelt's tenure in this role was marked by efforts to modernize the Navy and prepare it for America's involvement in World War I. His travels to Europe during the war exposed him to the complexities of international politics, further shaping his worldview. In 1921, at the age of 39, Roosevelt was diagnosed with polio, a disease that left him paralyzed from the waist down. This life-altering event tested his character and resilience. Determined not to let his condition define him, Roosevelt underwent rigorous physical therapy and learned to appear in public standing with the aid of braces. During this period, Roosevelt purchased a resort in Warm Springs, Georgia, which he transformed into a rehabilitation center for polio patients. His battle with the disease deepened his empathy and strengthened his resolve to overcome adversity, qualities that would later define his presidency. Roosevelt returned to politics in 1928, successfully running for governor of New York. As governor governor, he implemented progressive policies to address the economic challenges facing the state during the onset of the Great Depression. Programs like unemployment relief and public works projects foreshadowed the New Deal initiatives he would later champion as president. His leadership during this crisis solidified his reputation as a pragmatic and compassionate leader, paving the way for his presidential bid. Elected as the 32nd President of the United States in 1932, Roosevelt took office at the height of the Great Depression. With unemployment reaching 25% and banks collapsing, the nation was in turmoil. In his inaugural address, Roosevelt reassured the American people with his famous words, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." Roosevelt's administration launched the New Deal, a series of programs and reforms aimed at economic recovery. Key initiatives included the Civilian Conservation Corps (CCC) provided jobs for millions of unemployed young men in conservation projects. The Public Works Administration (PWA) funded large-scale infrastructure projects such as roads, bridges, and schools. The Social Security Act established unemployment insurance and pensions for the elderly. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation (FDIC) restored confidence in the banking system by insuring deposits. Through these programs, Roosevelt transformed the role of the federal government, making it a central force in economic and social policy. His fireside chats, a series of radio broadcasts, further connected him with the American people, fostering trust and hope during difficult times. When World War II erupted in 1939, Roosevelt initially sought to keep the United States neutral while supporting Allied nations through initiatives like the Lend-Lease Act, which provided military aid to Britain and the Soviet Union. However, the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, prompted the U.S. to enter the war. As Commander-in-Chief, Roosevelt played a pivotal role in coordinating the Allied powers. He worked closely with Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin, forging a strategy that prioritized defeating Nazi Germany before turning to Japan. Key moments of his wartime leadership included the Atlantic Charter, 1941, a declaration with Churchill outlining post-war goals for peace and self-determination. The Tehran Conference, 1943, the first meeting of Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin to plan the D-Day invasion. The Yalta Conference, 1945, a pivotal discussion on post-war Europe, including plans for the United Nations. Roosevelt's ability to balance military strategy with diplomacy was critical to the Allied victory. His vision of a post-war world shaped by international cooperation reflected his enduring optimism and commitment to peace. On April 12, 1945, just weeks before the end of World War II in Europe, Franklin D. Roosevelt died of a cerebral hemorrhage at his retreat in Warm Springs, Georgia. His death marked the end of an era, leaving the nation in mourning. Roosevelt's legacy is profound. He served 4 terms, the longest of any U.S. president, and fundamentally reshaped the role of government in American life. His leadership during the Great Depression and World War II cemented his reputation as one of the greatest leaders in history. Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." These words, spoken during a time of unparalleled crisis, encapsulate his enduring optimism and strength. His life serves as a testament to the power of leadership, resilience, and vision in shaping the course of history. 3 men, 3 paths, one defining moment in history. Adolf Hitler's vision of domination led to destruction. Winston Churchill's unwavering resolve became a beacon of hope, and Franklin D. Roosevelt's steadfast leadership united a fractured world. Their legacies remind us of the power and peril of leadership in times of great conflict.